Testing. Hello, Lake County. I think I'm a little bit low. Yep. Very low. But yet, it's been interesting. We've been gone for a long way, and I almost forgot how to use the board.
Yeah, no kidding.
Welcome back. Northwest Lake County. This is Dick Barr, your host of Unlocking Lake County, here with Sly Marinca in the Christin chair. Say hi.
Hello, everybody.
It's been a while.
It has been a long time, my friend.
Yeah, how you been?
But good, hanging in there, busy. Kids out of school. Then you had Memorial Day. Then it's just been one thing after another here for the last little while here. And I know you were out of town too.
Could you do me a favor?
Yes,
Switch
sir.
to mic 7. We got a hiss in mic 6.
Absolutely. All right. Is that better?
That's much better.
There we go. So yeah, just been really busy. Had a great, work-wise, great month of May. May was a pretty solid month for us. We closed.
I saw that. You killed like
lot.
16 plus deals.
Yeah, I did 16 deals on my end, and my team, my branch, did 39 altogether. So it was a very, very, very solid month for us.
That's awesome.
Almost $12 million in loans closed. So one of the best months we've had in a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's funny is Kristen's not here today. I was going to do a shout out to her because Kristen had, 18 months in the business, and she nailed it. She had for the office, she had the highest number of dollar sales in the entire
go
office.
Kristen.
Beat me, beat everybody.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, she did a great job. She's really rocking it.
Amazing.
So Kristen couldn't be here today, but she's here in spirit. She says hello to everybody. She had an emergency she had to take care of, but she'll be back next week, and
Yes.
we'll get you more info. So kids out of school, has
Yes.
your volleyball stopped?
It has, yes. We finished in, I think, that last tournament. I think you guys were at that last tournament, too, in
Which one,
Milwaukee,
Milwaukee?
like May 17th or something like that,
It's
18th.
like in the convention center, right?
Yeah, at the Baird Center. Yep, love that place. So many courts. And, yeah, that was the last one. So we are done for that. And then my daughter starts beach volleyball next
Beach
week.
volleyball,
Yeah.
really?
Which supposedly for young kids is great because it's hard to run in sand, so it really builds some extra strength and
sure.
pop in their step. A lot of the coaches recommend.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Beach is a whole different animal. Less players on the court, but you're in sand. So jumping, running, moving, all of that, you got to work a little bit harder. Plus, it's hot outside. It's outdoors, so
Yeah.
She's excited to start that.
So we've got one more tournament this week coming
Okay.
up. Yeah, so it's a 3-day tournament. So we're it's our last one. She did the little extension
Yeah.
So she's got different team members, but
Okay.
our last one's in Peoria. So
Okay, nice.
yeah, and that'll end the season. And then what's started already? Summer clubs.
Yeah,
Summer clubs and summer camps.
Luckily, we're not doing any of that. My daughter does have one. Nike does sponsors or puts on, I should say, a volleyball clinic. It's actually at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, but it's not overnight or anything like that. It's a couple days. I think it's in July, and she signed up for that. So.
No, well, that's cool. That's fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy the club stuff.
It's so much, though, isn't
It's
it?
a lot.
You guys, it's just the amount of running around we do,
Oh, yeah.
and it's
I got to give my wife props because she does most of that
Okay,
running around.
good.
I don't do all the weekend stuff.
Yeah.
She'll do the weekends. She'll take
Okay.
her out. A couple of them I will go on. Like we went to the Dells when we were.
Oh, yeah.
Were you in the Dells this year?
Yeah.
I don't think you were there at the same time
with
we
the
were.
dome where you play in that blow up dome.
Yeah, the one
that your
that you
ears
can't hear
pop in.
anything.
Yeah. It's all. Everyone says the same thing. As soon as you walk into it, you're like,
It's just like solid noise.
Yeah.
It's like a wall of noise.
Right.
But yeah, it was a good time. I like
Nice.
the wilderness. I think that's where we stayed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Always good for Paul Bunyan's for breakfast.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A lot happening in the news now, and I know you're going to get into some financial news for us
Yeah.
later. Because what's funny is I'm getting a lot of questions. I'm sure you're getting the same thing.
Sure.
The nationally definitely showing signs of slowing down in the real
Correct.
estate market, but I'm still not seeing it on the ground.
No, yeah, we're the area we are in. We're not boom and bust cycle as much as the coasts
Correct.
are, and I think that you got to look at that. You can't just make a blanket statement and say, "Oh, the housing market is softening." Yeah, you're right. In Florida, where, house prices doubled in 5 years, yeah, there might be a little bit of a correction down there. And I think we're seeing that. But here, I mean, we're still, I'm not seeing that here at all.
Zero evidence of it.
Yeah.
And, the funny thing is that our market, It definitely. We've got good weeks and bad weeks.
Yep.
And anytime we're having a little bit of a lull, oh no, the sky is falling, the market's dying.
Right.
The reality is I tell every client every year, if you're a seller, sometimes the market just stops on Memorial Day.
Right.
Just, there's no real reason. Usually it runs till mid-July, but sometimes it really slows down after Memorial Day. And we saw evidence of that for about 2 weeks after Memorial Day, but already starting to see signs of it going away. In our market minute today, we're going to talk about our inventory is still low here.
Yeah.
The buyers are still going under contract. Sellers are still selling. Certain segments of the market are a little bit different, I think, due to uncertainty in the market and what's happening, of obviously rates, and you're going to talk about that later, I know that. But not seeing anything like we saw this. Do you know Tristan Almuda, I think the name is?
I don't think so.
He's an influencer, national influencer, real estate broker. I think he's out of California.
Okay.
He does coaching, and he does some, tries to, make a name for himself. But every day, you just see his posts. 500,000 more sellers than buyers in the market.
I was going to talk about that article. I actually have it pulled up, the one in MarketWise. Yep, I literally have that article pulled up. Yep.
And it's just kind of creating this kind of skies. And sometimes these things become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Right.
But we're definitely not seeing this here. We're still at 1 to 2 month supply of inventory in all of our communities. And the sellers are still selling them. But like you said, Florida, Texas, California, Arizona, New York, those markets, where they had huge uprisings on price.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to correct.
Right.
And, similar, like you said, the Midwest in general, we don't have those roller coaster peaks and valleys. That's why our real estate is generally more affordable than the rest of the country, and it's also why we don't see the big spikes and we don't see the big booms.
Right. Yeah, it's boom and bust for sure. Like Florida, I have a client that recently sold his home in Florida, and it once appraised for well over $1 million, and it sat on the market until he finally sold it for less than $800. And but he paid $500 for it. So it's like,
the poor guy.
You still made out you still did really, really well in the 10 years you owned that property. Should you have gotten out sooner? Well, yeah, you would have walked away with more, but you still did okay. It wasn't like he, lost money on the deal. And I think that's kind of like the thing that we don't think about. We just see, the prices are dropping. Relative to what? If you bought a house in 2021 or 2022 during the heights and when everybody was buying down there, you probably had to pay way over list price to get it. You couldn't do an inspection. You probably put an appraisal gap in there and you got your house. Now, those are the people that may, or, if they do have to sell or, if they're forced to sell or whatever, you're probably going to lose a little bit. Yeah. But in general, we're like you said, we're kind of immune to that. We don't get these huge, peaks, in spikes in real estate prices in the Midwest that we're kind of used to seeing on the coasts.
Yep.
So,
and similar to you, June is going to be probably our best month ever, in real estate.
Nice.
And it's because the buyers are there. But here's what I want to make clear. When we talk about how good the market is and all these buyers, it's not like there's 1,000 buyers out there.
Yeah.
There's just happens to be more buyers than there are sellers.
Right.
And anytime you have that situation, whether it's 1 million buyers and 900,000 sellers, or 10 buyers and 9 sellers, or 1 buyer and 0 sellers, the effect is the same.
Right.
The demand outweighs the supply.
Right.
And we do have an incredibly abysmal supply.
Yeah.
And people got to move.
Right.
They got to move.
Right. What's the alternative? You can't live with mom and dad forever if you're, young. You got a lot of investors. That's the other thing I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I'm getting calls from people that are saying, hey, my landlord just said I need to be out because he wants to sell the house. The landlords, some of them want to cash out. As you get older, you may not want the headache anymore. You may be looking at the market and saying this might be the top. And I'm getting calls regularly from people that are saying, hey, I need to be out in 60 days. Or 30 days. That's what my landlord gave me. Where are you going to go? There's still a very limited inventory for rentals. Home builds are not keeping up with demand, so there's not enough new housing in our area. And that's also something we could look at, those kind of outlier areas, the coasts. They're building a ton of homes in Florida. and Texas and Arizona.
There's a reason, though.
There's a reason, right?
The prices command the price of construction.
Here, we're not seeing that. So again, like, where are these people going to go? They have to look for, you can't find a rental. You got to look for something to buy. So yes, I agree. There's certainly more buyers here than there are sellers, which we're not seeing that maybe necessarily nationally.
Right. So be careful when you watch or you get your news from national sources. It's very important to get it local, because local is, real estate is local, just like what politics, they always say. Politics is local. Let's go into that development, new construction, because that's been a problem and it continues to be a problem.
Right.
As you know, we were fighting. Lake County was trying to impose a new, higher tax on new construction homes, and we fought that because when you don't have people willing to build, I don't know what sense it makes increasing the price or the cost for a building. So we need every advantage we get, because until we get a reasonable amount of supply to meet the demand, the prices are just going to continue to rise.
Right.
And here's the problem. As the prices rise, so do the taxes. And you can make the argument, well, the governments are still getting paid the same amount of money, so taxes aren't technically going up. But yes, yours are. If you're living in an area with a high appreciation rate, because your area is appreciating faster than another area, your taxes are for sure going to go up.
Right.
And the lower appreciating areas are going to, probably stabilize or reduce. So it's important. Housing is such an important factor of wealth and long-term retirement security.
Absolutely.
We have to protect it, and the young people have to be able to get into housing.
Right.
And we've talked about options where they can get into something like maybe lower visibility areas or homes that need more construction. Are you seeing any buyers on 2 or 3K loans yet?
No, we're not really. There's just, again, those types of properties, investors are scooping those
They're
up.
scooping them up for cash.
There's not even time for, as soon as something like that needs a little bit of TLC, or you see cash offers only on the listing, I mean, there's no way, you're not going to compete
unless
with an
it's
investor
overpriced.
unless it's overpriced. Right, but typically we see investors. That's the other thing. I'm working with investors that are scooping up property still. That even though the rates are high and even though the prices are elevated, the rent that some of these properties can command with very minimal out of pocket, to fix them up and get them ready to rent is still. So you're competing against, and that's the thing. A lot of these first-time home buyers, they're priced out of the market because the prices have gone up, the rates have gone up, the taxes have gone up. So they just can't afford to compete with, some of the investors, maybe someone that has a home. Like, the people that are winning right now are the people that have real estate to sell.
Yes.
Because you're selling high to buy high. It really stinks for the first-time home buyer that doesn't have something to sell, that hasn't realized that appreciation. But, hey, you got to start somewhere. Maybe lower your expectations a little bit.
Yep.
Instead of buying that, perfect home, that is all done up and you're going to pay for that. Maybe buy something that's a little bit cheaper that you could put some sweat equity into, that you could fix it up yourself, or, and then that way you can potentially, hopefully realize some gain for the next time you buy. Then you buy the nice one that's already done. But we live in a I want it now society.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the reason we're in the mess we're in.
What was that saying? It's everyone wants to get to heaven, but they don't want to die first.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to work for it and get there.
Right.
Back when our parents were doing this, they got the cheapest, affordable thing that they can get, and they worked their way up if they were lucky.
Right.
And but now it's like, I want what my parents have.
Absolutely.
I want top of the line. I want 9-foot ceilings. I want a full finished walkout basement with granite or quartz countertops in the best neighborhoods, in the best schools. Sometimes you just got to start.
Right.
If you wait for the best before you pull the trigger, you wind up with the worst.
And imagine, like, I still to this day think about my client in 2021 that said, "Oh, the prices are too high, the rates have gone up a little bit. I'm going to wait till next year." And he's done that every year. Every year I talk to the guy. I haven't yet this year, but every year since 21, so in 22, 23, 24, we had a conversation again. And the guy's been paying over $3,000 a month in rent since that time. And what he could have had at that time with those rates, I can't even imagine how much. If I really should figure out with price appreciation,
Right.
loss
Don't
of
do it.
that,
Don't
right?
do it.
Loss, and just figure out how much this decision to wait has cost him.
Oh, I'm sure it's huge.
Huge. I bet you it's six
probably
figures.
40%.
Yeah, I bet you it's six
You think
figures.
it's full six figures?
I bet you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I bet you it's six figures. Yep.
Um,
Because I mean, how much has the values gone up since
About 40%.
21? Plus, he would have been paying on a mortgage and realized some tax savings on that instead
Sure.
of throwing away rent a little
in
bit.
Illinois,
right?
not so much anymore.
Not so much because
Yeah,
of the cap, right?
because of the
but
salt cap.
something. And he was paying $3,000 a month in rent, dude.
But it would have been paying down his own equity. He's basically paying himself back the
Correct.
money. You know, it's I know it's not the same.
Slowly, very slowly,
Yes.
right? Because of front-loaded interest on a 30-year loan, which is I would imagine what he would have gotten. But just looking back on it, man, what a what a bad decision.
Yeah. If only we all could see into the future.
Yes.
There was one thing I wanted to ask you about, but I think I'm going to wait until your mortgage minute because I want to delve into this deep because we haven't given any advice in a long time, and a lot's changed. I think since we last were on the air, rates have gone up considerably, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a big sell-off in the Treasury market. There have been a few Treasury auctions that have not gone well. And there's lots of reasons for it. Fear of future inflation with the tariffs. Global, I don't know if you followed what's kind of been happening globally with like Japan's debt and their yields spiking because, I mean, they're all but insolvent. And so
Japan?
Yeah, pretty much. Their debt to GDP is awful, yeah. And it's not getting better. And so whenever like global bond yields spike, we follow, right? And so, that happened. And then, like I said, the whole fear of, renewed inflation with the proposed tariffs to level the playing field, that has also caused some sell-off. So, yeah, rates shot up. I mean, we were pushing 7.5-ish. Not the highest it's been.
Yeah.
But, they have crept down slowly, right? They have crept down a little bit. Over the last, 30 days or so, which has been nice, a little bit of a reprieve. I think, the national average is 6.89% right now, which is much better than, the spike. I think we saw 7 point, what was it? It was about 7.2.
Oh, I thought it was higher. I thought it went to 7.4. Okay.
So again, that's the national average.
Right.
So whenever we're looking at that, if you have a small down payment, if you have, credit score that's not perfect or not great, if you're, it can be higher. Because, I mean, we definitely did some in the mid sevens. But things are moving in the right direction again. We had the inflation reading that actually came out today that, inflation ticked up a tiny, tiny bit because of the quote unquote tariffs, but not nearly as much as was expected. And I think we're going to see as time goes on that a lot of this talk of tariffs and how it'll impact things going forward, it's not going to materialize because I don't think we're ever going to see any actual tariffs imposed. I think all of the trading partners are going to figure it out and come up with a solution and a deal to, hopefully not go through that. And pre-tariff, that's part of the other thing that's in this data. I don't know if you noticed, but like as soon as the information came out about the potential reciprocal tariffs, what did people do? They went and bought new cars. They went and bought these big ticket items to get ahead of it. That's in this data now because now we're a couple months behind and inflation still, it ticked up from 2.3% to 2.4% when the expectation was that it would be higher than that.
Okay.
So, again, all things that we've been watching and we've been keeping an eye on. And, the Fed, the meeting that they have here, let's take a look here. The next meeting is June 18th. There's a 0.01% chance of a Fed rate cut right now. So not going to happen. It's
but
just
still not zero.
Still not zero, but it's just not looking like, the Feds, and they've been very vocal about it, that they keep saying that they want to, make sure, that the tariffs aren't going to impact inflation long term and see that spike up again. But the further you go out into the year now, so in July, there's a 16% chance of a Fed rate cut. The next meeting in September, Now you're talking a 68% chance of a Fed rate cut. If you go out into October, it's only 15% odds that there isn't a rate cut. So now you're talking
so
85%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the further you go out, the markets are looking for the Fed to cut rates. And that's kind of what we've been saying the second half of this year. We just really got to see how this whole tariff thing kind of plays out. Lots going on financially. But we had a great, like you said, May. We had a little bit of a lull. I noticed that as well right after Memorial Day. Things slowed down a little bit, but you got graduations, you got
Absolutely.
Kids getting out of school, you got all of these other life events that happen typically end of May, beginning of June. So seasonal.
I got contacted by someone, a landowner. They were hoping to convert their land into developable space, sell it off to a developer or a builder. They were disappointed because when you do the economics on new construction, especially here in Lake County,
it's so hard.
It's so hard because the costs are expensive. Then you've got the mandates. You got to have the electric vehicle outlet in the garage.
Right.
Now in Lake County,
sprinklers.
There's a $18,000. You got impact fees.
Right.
You've got now they've got the bird-proof window requirement coming from the county. So you add all those things on, and the governments are always like, they think nobody bears the cost of them.
Right.
Like, that just gets passed on to the buyer. No, it doesn't, because market value sells a house.
Right.
No one's paying extra for a window because it's bird-proof in Lake County. I'm sorry.
Right.
Well, maybe there's 2 people in the county who will do that.
We know them.
Right. And so once you tack all these costs on, you figure, just to get to a point where a builder can make a decent return, you're talking about a cost of about, they could sell it for about $90,000 a lot. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, even on large acreage, 20 acres, 30 acres, 40 acres, there's not a huge profit potential.
Yeah.
So the land that people think they're sitting on gold, if they're sitting on gold in its commercial, sitting on land in a commercial area, they're going to do better.
Right.
But the residential development, it just doesn't make financial sense. And, I had a guy who wanted a significant amount of money, and, in the multiple millions. And I looked at it, I was like, I think it's worth less than $1 million.
Wow.
Once you can get the number of homes into this area, that'll fit, because you got to get 25% gets thrown away right away.
Right.
You've got the infrastructure, the road, the sewers, the water, and then, the water retention, right? So that takes up at least a quarter of the land, if not more, depending on, the hydrology and the topology of the property. And once you apply all that, it's just this. We've got to do something in this state to make it more incentivized to build.
Yeah.
Now, they're doing it in Volo.
Yeah.
Volo is somehow figured out, and they're building a lot in Volo. Mundelein, too, they're building a lot in Mundelein. I don't know what Volo's doing differently to allow it, and maybe it's because of the SSAs. But SSAs, it's just another tax, and I guess it's advantageous if your SSA expires and you can pay it off.
Sure.
But I don't know what the answer is. I know we're almost at, so I'm going to do I have time for it? Yeah, I'm going to have time to do my market minute real quick. So let's do that real quick.
Okay.
Stay on top of the market with Dick Barr's Market Minute.
Dick Barr's Market Minute.
Hello and welcome back, Lake County. This is Dick Barr, your host of Unlocking Lake County, here back after a couple of weeks with our first Market Minute for Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Not a lot has changed. We're still seeing a strong seller's market in almost all of our communities, and we're going to hit these down, starting with Antioch, where Antioch's done $4.25 million in the past week. Their month supply of inventory is sitting at 1 month, and so when you hear national news about the sky is falling and there's more buyers than sellers, that might be true in Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, and New York, but it's not true here in Illinois, and definitely not in Lake County. Average market time is 13.4 days. Active listings in Antioch right now is 48. There were 7 new listings with 12 new contracts. Almost double the number of new contracts versus new listings. What does that tell you? The buyers are still here and the buyers are still buying. 12 closed listings this week. Now on over to Volo, Fox Lake, and Ingleside, where they did $2.5 million in sales. Again, 1 month supply of inventory. Average market time, 17.3 days. 25 active listings, 7 new listings, 7 new contracts, and 3 closed listings. Now on over to Grays Lake and Wildwood. 7 million. That's the most they've done in a long time.
Wow.
1.25 month supply of inventory. Average market time is only 11.9 days. Active listings 43. 15 new listings. 14 new contracts. What does that tell you? It's keeping par. And 9 closed listings. Now on over to Gurney and Wadsworth, where they did 5 million last week. 1.2 month supply of inventory. Average market time 11.3 days. Are you starting to notice a pattern?
Yeah.
36 active listings, 13 new listings, 15 new contracts, and 12 closed listings last week. Now on over to my backyard of Lindenhurst and Lake Villa. Only 2.25. Excuse me. Only 2.25 million in sales last week, but that's because there's no inventory to sell.
Yeah.
1.2 month supply of inventory, average market time 23.8 days, 44 new active listings, 16 new listings, 12 new contracts, and 12 closed listings. Now to finish up with the Round Lake area, 2.8 million in sales this past week. Again, 1.25 month supply of inventory. Average market time only 10 days. You would think we're in the heart of the seller's market.
Right.
And everyone's talking about these national headlines saying everything's going bad. No, that's not what the data shows locally. Locally, we still have good product and buyers willing to pick it up at a stiff price, even with higher rates. 32 active listings, 10 new listings, 8 new contracts, and 6 closed listings. I got to be honest, Sly.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that the numbers look this good considering everything we're hearing on the media.
The noise is the noise. And again, like we don't live in Florida where there's 600 listings coming on the market every day. And,
Exactly.
Seminole County or whatever. That's not it here. We're still in the throes of, it's seller's market, yeah. Buyer's market, not even close.
Not even close.
Not
and
even
while
close.
nationally, sure, I'm hearing 5 month supply of inventory in some markets. Definitely not here.
Right.
So if you're still looking to buy and if you're still looking to sell, there's still time. We did have a little bit of lull after Memorial Day weekend, but it seems to be back.
Yeah.
Sellers are coming out in full force, and buyers are also coming out in full force. So I recommend strongly that you do what you can to get to market. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these words. There we go.
Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr will return in just a few moments after these important messages. Don't touch that dial.
You're listening to Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
Your favorite show right here on 98.3 FM.
98.3, The Life.
It's time for the weather.
This weather update is brought to you by Fidelity National Title Insurance Company. We're in for a mostly clear night, dipping down to a comfortable 60 with a southwest wind spinning between 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow, the sun's taking center stage again with a high reaching 89. Expect those west-southwest breezes to pick up between 10 to 15 miles per hour and watch out for gusts zipping up to 25 miles per hour. As Wednesday night approaches, there's a slight chance of showers or a thunderclap here or there from 7 p.m. onward under mostly cloudy skies and a low near 61. Keep an eye on those clouds. The east-southeast breeze will hang out at about 5 miles per hour with gusts fluttering up to 15 miles per hour. If we do see any rain, expect it to be just a light sprinkling.
Unlocking Lake County.
98.3, The Life.
Hello, it's time for Unlocking This Day in History. Brought to you by Harder and Shotland Law Firm in Round Lake Beach. Let's take a quick trip back in time to what happened today in history. First, we whisk back to June 11th, 1979, when the joy of fast food combined with space-age technology. McDonald's introduced the first Happy Meal in the United States. Suddenly, kids nationwide found a surprise toy nestled in with their nuggets and fries, a combo that's been making children smile ever since. Talk about a recipe for happiness. Now, let's bounce ahead to the political swirl of June 11th, 1993. A cheeky little asteroid about a mile across, later named 1993 KA2, zipped past Earth at a snappy 3 million miles away. Thankfully, a far enough distance to spare us from ducking for cover. Still, a good reminder by the cosmos to keep an eye up there every now and then. On a more artistic note, let's groove to June 11th, 2002, when American Idol first premiered on Fox. Simon Cowell, Paula Abdul, and Randy Jackson filled our homes with musical critique and big moments of talent discovery. This was the beginning of a phenomenal platform that turned ordinary folks into superstars. Talk about a pitch-perfect history. That's a wrap for today's historical scrapbook, folks. We hope you enjoyed this time-traveling tour. Be sure to join us next time for more fun history bites. We will catch you next time.
Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr will return in just a few moments after these important messages. Don't touch that dial.
This is Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
It's time for the weather.
This weather update is brought to you by Fidelity National Title Insurance Company. We're in for a mostly clear night, dipping down to a comfortable 60 with a southwest wind spinning between 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow, the sun's taking center stage again with a high reaching 89. Expect those west-southwest breezes to pick up between 10 to 15 miles per hour, and watch out for gusts zipping up to 25 miles per hour. As Wednesday night approaches, there's a slight chance of showers or a thunderclap here or there from 7 p.m. onward under mostly cloudy skies and a low near 61. Keep an eye on those clouds. The east-southeast breeze will hang out at about 5 miles per hour, with gusts fluttering up to 15 miles per hour. If we do see any rain, expect it to be just a light sprinkling.
You're listening to Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
Unlocking Lake County.
98.3, The Life.
It's the best station on the radio.
It's time for Unlocking This Day in History. Brought to you by Harder & Schottland Law Firm in Round Lake Beach. Let's take a quick trip back in time to what happened today in history. First, we whisk back to June 11th, 1979, when the joy of fast food combined with space-age technology. McDonald's introduced the first Happy Meal in the United States. Suddenly, kids nationwide found a surprise toy nestled in with their nuggets and fries, a combo that's been making children smile ever since. Talk about a recipe for happiness. Now, let's bounce ahead to the political swirl of June 11th, 1993. A cheeky little asteroid about a mile across, later named 1993 KA2, zipped past Earth at a snappy 3 million miles away. Thankfully, a far enough distance to spare us from ducking for cover. Still, a good reminder by the cosmos to keep an eye up there every now and then. On a more artistic note, let's groove to June 11th, 2002, when American Idol first premiered on Fox. Simon Cowell, Paula Abdul, and Randy Jackson filled our homes with musical critique and big moments of talent discovery. This was the beginning of a phenomenal platform that turned ordinary folks into superstars. Talk about a pitch-perfect history. That's a wrap for today's historical scrapbook, folks. We hope you enjoyed this time-traveling tour. Be sure to join us next time for more fun history bites. We will catch you next time.
You're listening to Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
Here's the top stories in real estate today. First up, significant changes are coming to the rental market in Chicago. According to a report from Crane's Chicago Business, the Chicago City Council has approved new regulations targeted at providing tenants with more rights and protections. These changes include extended notice requirements for lease terminations and rent increases. Tenant advocacy groups are calling it a win for renters who have faced uncertainty and insecurity in a competitive housing market. The legislation will come into effect early next year. In downtown Chicago, there is a new residential skyscraper poised to change the skyline. As per the Chicago Tribune, developers have broken ground on a 76-story tower on Wabash Avenue. This ambitious project, set to be completed by 2026, promises luxury condominiums featuring state-of-the-art amenities and stunning views of Lake Michigan and the city. The development has already attracted interest from buyers seeking prime real estate in the heart of the city. Looking to Cook County, property taxes remain a hot topic. The Cook County Assessor's Office has announced an increase in assessed property values, which is projected to lead to higher property taxes for homeowners. The increase has caused some concern among residents who are worried about affordability in the wake of inflationary pressures. Local officials suggest homeowners review their assessments and consider appealing if they believe the valuation is unjustly high. In Lake County, the real estate market is experiencing a notable trend of increased sales in the suburban areas. According to a release from the Lake County Association of Realtors, there has been a 10% rise in residential property transactions year to year. This trend reflects a regional inclination for suburban living, with buyers prioritizing larger living spaces and home offices. The demand is also being fueled by continued low-interest mortgage rates. Lastly, on a broader note, the global housing market is feeling the impact of changing interest rates. Markets traditionally known for their stability are witnessing volatility as central banks worldwide adjust rates in response to burgeoning inflation. This shift has implications for mortgage lending, with buyers and investors adopting a more cautious approach. Analysts from The Economist predict fluctuations will continue into the coming year, influencing both local and international housing markets. Our top stories are brought to you by the Dick Barr Group at Village Realty. That's it for now. We now return you back to Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
You're listening to Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
You guys have a great radio station. You just play the best music.
Welcome back to Weird But True in Lake County, where we uncover the quirkiest, oddball tales right here in our backyard. Today, we're diving into the waters of Gurnee, Illinois, home to a peculiar mystery involving none other than the Loch Ness Monster's lesser-known cousin. That's right, folks. Before you scratch your head, no, we're not tripping on fermented root beer from Six Flags. This is a real local legend. Right here, in the waters of Lake Michigan, people claim to have witnessed a mysterious dragon-like creature lurking back in the 1880s. Locals around that time gave it a rather captivating name, the Lake Michigan Sea Serpent. Spotted by respected citizens and seafaring folk alike, this aquatic cryptid had the region anxious to say the least. Descriptions varied, with reports claiming it was anywhere from 30 to 50 feet long, with the ability to make waves like a small steamship. Imagine that in our serene waters. Though the Lake Michigan Sea Serpent hasn't been seen lately, perhaps it's taken a page from Nessie's book and gone underwater. We can never truly be sure what's swimming below the surface, can we? Could it return? Or was it all the result of sailors' tall tales after a long day on the lake? We'll likely never know, but our imaginations can swim wild. So, next time you take a dip or gaze over Lake Michigan, remember, we aren't just sharing water with fish and Gold Coast tourists. There might be a story or two lurking beneath. Brought to you by the Sly Marinca team at Cross Country Mortgage. Sly and his team can be reached at 847-722-1775. Stay tuned for more Weird But True in Lake County, where we keep it curious.
Welcome back to Unlocking Lake County with your host, Dick Barr.
Welcome back, Lake County. This is Dick Barr, your host of Unlocking Lake County, here back with Sly Marinca.
Hello, hello.
Sly's sitting in the Christin Kaufman chair. Christin had something to take care of today, so she'll be back next week. And we'll have all kinds of cool, fun, more relatable conversation tips. Well,
yes.
But this week, Sly and I are going to keep it at this highly boring technical financial aspect. So I know some of you like it, so
Yeah.
we'll keep it going. So anyone just joining, we're just kind of going over the difference between what's happening in the national headlines versus what's happening here in our backyard. Market is still hot here. Properties are selling as fast as they're listed, in some cases more faster than they're listed. And so still time this season to get your homes on the market, get them ready for sale. Still time before that kind of mid-July cutoff. That's when we pretty, what is it? What are plants called that come back every year? Perennial. Yeah, or we have that perennial July 15th cutoff when that's when families kind of stop looking because they can't get into school in time if they close after that. So still time to get houses on the market, so don't fret just because you might see some national media headlines showing some sky is falling news. It's not happening here.
Yeah.
The evidence is just clear. Will it happen? Who knows? But right now, it's definitely not happening. And we're definitely seeing signs of tick-ups, more transactions happening. Sly announced his best month in years. You know, our group's having our best month in years.
Yep.
Just a lot of business happening right now. So still time to take advantage of it all. But we're not going to delay because we know you guys have been waiting about 3 weeks for your latest mortgage update. And here you go.
Mortgage Minute with Sly Marinca and Cross Country Mortgage on Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr.
All right, everybody. Well, I wish we had a little bit better news on the rate front. As Dick mentioned, we're not really seeing Fed rate cuts yet. We'll go into a little bit of why that is. Currently, the 30-year fixed national average is 6.89%, with the 15-year fixed national average sitting right at 6.2%, down a little bit. We did see it spike up to 7.2% here a few weeks ago. There was a big sell-off in the bond market related to some auctions, with bonds that didn't go as planned, and then some other more international, global bond yield spikes. So with that said, it's all but 0% odds that the Feds will cut rates in June. It's actually 0.01% right now, so there still is a chance, but very unlikely. But as the year goes on, if you look at the Fed rate cut odds, we were talking about July now, there's about a 16% chance of a Fed rate cut. But now if you look at September, the September 17th meeting, it's about a 69% odds of a Fed rate cut in September. And the further you go out in the year, now if you're looking at the October 29th Fed meeting, there's only a 15% chance that rates stay where they currently are at.
Where are these odds set? Are these Vegas lines?
No, they're traders, bond traders trading both sides of the odds are based on current trades.
Okay.
Investors looking forward and basically predicting based on a whole slew of economic data.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the year, there's only a 5% chance odds. Again, traders are saying for rates to be where they currently at based on the information that we have today. That can obviously change. If there's maybe a bad inflation reading that comes out, which in fact, the most recent inflation reading came out today. Remember last month inflation was at 3%.
Yep.
But it was expected to tick up to 2.5%. It did not. It ticked up to 2.4%. So right in the middle. So very, very tame inflation report compared to what was expected.
It's almost like the national news reports things that just clearly aren't true. Everyone watching the news is like, the sky is falling, tariffs are killing us all, inflation's killing us.
Right. And obviously we talked about that a little bit. Like, the tariffs are still paused, right? Like they're trying to make deals. I think this administration's trying to make deals with other countries to kind of, even the playing field a little bit. And so like this little spike we're seeing is, we talked about it right after these tariffs were announced. What did people do?
Start buying.
They went out and bought big ticket items, things like cars, things like appliances, things that cost a lot of money to try to get ahead of it. Because I don't want to pay an extra 10% for my car or 15% for my fridge or whatever. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing in this data. It's not the actual tariffs because they haven't been applied yet. So it can't be that, right?
Right.
The one thing I've always said about inflation, and it's really seeming to ring true, is I think all inflation follows the price of oil.
Sure.
And if you're looking at, gasoline prices are 12% cheaper than they are a year ago. So with everything comes, everything is transported here, whether it's on a ship, whether it's on a train, in a plane, in a truck, whatever, the lower the price of gas, I think that's the biggest driver to some of this. And we are seeing oil prices and gas prices come down. In January of 2022, we peaked at $5.01 a gallon in gas.
Really?
That was the national average. the week of July 4th, 2022, $5 a gallon.
Wow. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it being 5+.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My wife's card took premium, and I remember paying darn near $6. And now we're down to $3.15. So again, that's one of the big drivers in seeing some of these inflation numbers come down. Rates still hovering, 6.89%, right around that 7% target. We'll keep an eye on it throughout the year to see, as more inflation readings come down, the markets are expecting Feds to cut rates. So hang in there. If you bought a house in the last couple of years and you're just waiting for that opportunity to refinance, definitely looks like it's on the horizon, hopefully later this year, if not next year. So hang in there and keep making your payments on time. Imperative that you keep your credit scores as high as possible so you get the best possible deal when it is time to refinance. And I did want to touch base on one thing that we've seen recently as well. Haven't seen it a ton over my career, but I think with these higher prices, and the values of homes going up, I've seen recently a few cases where people have been living in a house that was maybe owned by a family member, grandma, whatever, and they had an agreement to pay X amount of dollars per month, and eventually the house is yours, but it was never put in writing. And it was just, I live in grandma's house,
right.
or another inherited house, whatever, deal with family. And I will say that if it is not in writing, and let's say
it don't exist.
Yeah, let's say something happens and grandma's no longer with us, that home will likely go to grandma's heirs, which hopefully you are one of. But if you are not, and there's nothing in writing, it can become a big issue between family, where maybe the home was worth significantly less when you started this agreement with grandma than it is now. And I always recommend get it in writing. Hire an attorney, to put a contract together, record the contract.
Which is an important step there.
Absolutely.
If it's not recorded, it don't matter. And if the will gets recorded with the estate before the land contract gets recorded, guess which one rules?
Yeah. Yep. Getting on title, if that's a possibility, doing a quick claim deed to add yourself to the title of the property.
We got to check if they're the lender, if there's any acceleration clauses.
Correct. So there are some. We are not lawyers, so we're not giving legal advice, but
right.
I promise you it'll make your life a lot better and easier. If you're in that situation, just get it in writing. Put the pen to paper, sign the agreement. This is what we're agreeing to. Get it recorded, do it the right way. Don't just leave it to chance, because I'll tell you, there are cases that I'm talking about, things get ugly. And, when there's heirs involved that see, dollar signs, your agreement with grandma is not the agreement anymore because she's no longer with us. So very important to make sure all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and everything is legal and legit above board, so that nobody can come back and say, oh, well, no.
Because nothing gets family against family more than the death of a loved one.
Well, when there's money involved, and another case was the opposite of that, where heirs wanted to come and take a property from the person that was still with us. And, even though the heirs hadn't talked to the deceased in over 20 years and had no relationship with them, they basically wanted to try to come in and say, well, no, we want our share of this property.
Sure.
And it didn't work out in their favor. There was a lawsuit involved, which cost, thousands of dollars and legal fees. And so, again, it makes sense to have it in writing, to have it on paper, and just do it the right way. Don't just leave it to chance. I mean, you're investing a lot of your hard-earned money into something. You want to make sure at the very end of it, it's yours.
I read a book once. It was given to me by a professional. It's called Who Not How. And I think it was written by Dan Sullivan. It's a great book. And it really goes into the importance of working with professionals.
Yeah.
Because professionals know all of this stuff.
Right.
Like I said, we can throw out opinions and, conjecture all day long. But that law professional is going to know everything.
Absolutely.
And it more often than not, hiring a professional is going to be cheaper in the long run for your ultimate, strategy.
Right.
Whether it be mortgage, whether it be law, whether it be, a plumber. I know it's cheaper for me to pay a plumber than to fix it 8 times
Yes.
myself and then hire a plumber.
Right. Right.
And they're so important because we do a lot of estate sales, probate work. We do a lot with the courts and wills and estates and stuff. And we see that a lot where someone feels they're owed the property. Sometimes the person living with grandma at the time she dies feel entitled to the property, but there is no entitlement.
Right.
There's the unless there's a will. Or a trust, and is given to that person, or that person has right to the property, you can't just stay there, and it causes a lot of friction. And sometimes it's hard. Families want to sell the property and move on and get their closure, but someone who feels entitled to that property, well, I don't want to move. I don't want to get out of the house.
Where am I going to go?
You've got no right to be in the house, and that's why pre-planning is so important.
Yeah.
Sit down with a lawyer. Go over your options. Should you do a trust? Should you do a will? That's all your attorney's going to tell you the best way to go forward on that.
Right.
I have my opinions, and each scenario is different.
Yeah.
So it says, what's better, this or that? Well, I don't
It's
know.
not a one-size-fits-all here.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And especially when it comes time to the end there, because I've seen estates get tied up in litigation for years.
Yeah.
Years.
And no one gets the house during that time, but you still got to pay to maintain it, and pay taxes, and
the attorney costs over that amount of time are huge.
Right.
The maintenance of it, and then I've seen situations where it happened in the downturn after 2008, and the value of the property just plummeted while they were fighting over what they thought were dollars, turned out to be fighting over nickels.
Right.
What was left after everything was done. So be careful. Heed Sly's advice on that. That's
Talk
good.
to a professional. Exactly.
But since we're on that subject, I want to talk about the opposite, because you might be able to help with this. A lot of times someone will come to me and they'll say, hey, Dad died. Mortgage is in his name. I'm the only heir. I want to keep the house.
Yeah.
Or, I'll be honest. So my situation, my dad died, and my brother wanted the house. But me and my sister were like, sure, it's yours. We don't care. We had that kind of relationship. We liked that he wanted to keep the house. It would have been a second house.
Yep.
And a place up in the mountains that we can visit too, kind of like the house that I grew up in, not my siblings, but we thought it was cool that he wanted to keep it. And, you can go get a mortgage and buy it, from the bank, or some banks will let you keep paying. So, but it doesn't say that in the contract.
Right.
It doesn't say that in the mortgage.
Yeah.
Is there a strict rule of thumb for taking over payments? And can you ever talk to the bank about problems if you're not the borrower, even though the borrower is deceased?
So, again, not a one-size-fits-all. Each servicer, each lender kind of does it their own way. Technically, when someone passes and they're the only one that's on that mortgage, there's no other co-borrower, technically that's their loan. It needs to be paid off.
Sure.
However, and I know this personally from two of my good friends, brothers, that both their mom and dad passed away within a few months of each other, elderly, and when that happened, and the one brother actually lived with mom and dad in the house. It was like a duplex style or with an in-law arrangement, but on the same floor. And the plan was, and it was all in the will, all in the trust. He gets the house, the other brother gets, other assets, and it was already agreed to. So when both parents passed, they had a 3% interest rate. They did it, at the right time. And for him to take on a new mortgage, because this was only a year or so ago, hey, you're going from 3 to 7.5. He's like, well, screw that. So he called the bank, explained to them what happened. He had the will, he had the trust, he had all of the legal paperwork showing that ownership was transferred to him. And he said, I really want to keep this mortgage. I do not want to refinance. I don't want to give up this interest rate. And his lender, which is a big national lender, agreed to it. They said, yeah, you know what? We don't see any problem as long as the payments are going to continue to be made on time. They put his information in the system as an additional contact on the loan. So they know who to go after if something does go awry.
So they did add him as a contact, so he
But
can
not
speak.
a borrower. So he's not a borrower. So this loan doesn't show up on his credit.
Right, but he can still speak
Correct.
about any discrepancies.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
that's important.
Because he was, when they did it, they put him on the title. It was all done the right way with an attorney.
Right.
If he had just been living there
Just kept paying.
and didn't have, and mom and dad didn't have a will or didn't have a trust or anything like that, there is a good chance the bank would have said, no, we want our money. We don't know you. But because all of the paperwork was legit, this lender said, you know what? We agree with this. We're going to let you keep this loan. We know who to contact if there's any defaults or if there's any problems. And also it was a small equity, or a big equity position. They didn't know like
Sure.
90% of the value of the house. It was less than 50%. So I'm sure that played into it as well. But the key is talk to the lender. You don't just want to assume. And the rule of thumb, though, I have found, as long as the payments are being made on time, typically you're not going to be bothered. Typically, it's not a one size fits all. But most of the time, the lender, all they care about is getting their money back.
Because let's imagine this hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
Is you're in a situation where maybe the person who inherited the home cannot qualify to refinance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of equity in the property.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe forget the fact a big national lender, a small investor lender, someone who owns a few portfolios, looks at it and says, $300,000 in equity in there.
Yeah. What's the risk?
No, the
No?
opposite. He can't refi into it.
Yeah,
We
true.
force him to pay it off. Then I foreclose.
Yeah.
That could happen
It could.
because the alienation
Yeah.
clause will require the payoff.
Yeah,
if
but-
he can't qualify to borrow the money,
Sure.
what are his options?
Sure.
So that's why talking in advance to an attorney
Well,
is so
again,
much more important.
Yeah. I mean, can't stress that enough to make sure you have it in writing. Whatever the situation is, talk to a professional, get it in writing. And these people had that. They had it all spelled out, so there was no fighting between the brothers of who got what. And,
That's great.
And, how smart, and in any situation with revolving any assets, it doesn't have to be real estate. It could be a 401k. It could be an IRA. It could be, whatever asset it is, you just want to make sure it's all on paper so that there's no gray area.
Absolutely. I want to thank everyone for joining us this week. Sly and I are going to get going. We got appointments to get to, but we'll see you next week, I believe, and we'll talk about that, and then we'll get going. Enjoy your week. There's going to be finally some beautiful, beautiful weather, and take care, and it was nice being with you. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the heart of our community, exploring the ins and outs of real estate and meeting the people who make Lake County truly remarkable. Remember, every property has a story, and every community member holds a key to unlocking our county's full potential. Don't miss out on discovering more hidden gems and expert insights. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday at 12 noon for another episode of Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr. Until then, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep unlocking the possibilities that await you in Lake County. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.